If an unpaid or volunteer role comes up, would you take it? I mean, it's not like you're getting paid to work on your personal projects, are you? So you're not losing anything by volunteering your time, but you are gaining a valuable job search differentiator. And that is you finally have something to put under work experience. That was Stephen Brook's strategy, at least. He's a recently hired junior software engineer who used a service called Chingu to find opportunities to build real applications with real teams for real nonprofits. And it gave him the work experience he needed to land his first paid job in tech. So let's hear how he did it. So Stephen, one controversial take in anyone's job search journey is the rise of things like unpaid internships or otherwise working for free. But I see here that you did a fair amount of that before you landed your first role. So tell me about how that worked out for you.
Well, I think it probably helped me stand out compared to other developers that weren't actually doing that. Plus, it gives you kind of not like the whole package, but a sort of a taste of what to come. You know, working with other people, different personalities, different challenges, and learning to communicate with others, regardless of what your personal interests or individual characteristics are. Plus, like the way that you code as well. No two people write code in exactly the same way. So being exposed to like how other people write code, I mean, that was a bit of a minefield actually.
Yeah, learning
I was
Git
looking
and
at other people's
source
code
control.
and using Git as well. It's like, right, you and me, we're seeing two totally different things here. So where have we gone wrong in the Git process, and trying to figure out that's just another problem that you will encounter in real
Yeah,
life.
because that's typically from the new developers that I work with, the biggest struggle. They can code a pretty website by themselves, but put them in a team environment on a legacy code base
Yeah.
where now they're dealing with, merge conflicts and things. That's a whole other beast that they haven't tackled if they're just working on a personal project. So tell me a little bit more
Yeah.
about this volunteer work that you did. First, where did you find it? What services, tools, or organizations did you partner with to find this volunteer work?
I think it was the middle of last year. I got introduced to Chingu, and that's the whole idea of it. They just put together teams of people, like developers, project leaders, and project managers, web designers, and people like that. Um, just to give them that experience of working together collaboratively to build a project. They describe it as like a real world project. I mean, I've heard that term thrown around quite a lot. I don't know if it's real world, but it's definitely a project that you can put on your portfolio that you've not actually built yourself. You've built it over a course of about 6 weeks with three or four other people from different parts of the world.
Very nice. So Chingu, I'll include a link to that just in the show notes if anybody's interested in checking it out themselves. So when you worked with,
It's fantastic, in my opinion. Sorry,
oh,
go
you're good. I
ahead.
was just going to ask, when you were doing this volunteer work, oftentimes people say, well, I can't work for free because, I have another job I need to have. I need, income. When you were working with something like Chingu, was that a full-time dedicated 6-week program, or are you just doing that, part-time, or what did that time commitment look like?
Yeah, the time commitment. I think they're. I think they ask that you try to commit 1 or 2 hours per day, like 5 days a week. If you can do more, that's fantastic. But typically, that's what you need to be doing to be eligible to pass the
And
course.
if you're working full time and you're trying to get into software development in your free time, you're probably only putting a few hours in the evening anyway. So if you're going to be, I would argue, if you're going to be working on a personal project in your free time, that honestly, recruiters, hiring managers don't care that much about. They want work experience. How much better would it be to wrap that in, some sort of, work experience, volunteer experience line item that you can now put, as a differentiator on your resume?
Well, that's exactly it. I think, if you build a project, even if it's impressive, and you put it on your portfolio, it won't look quite as good as being able to put some voluntary experience and working with a team to build a different kind of project. That's just my personal opinion, but I'm quite certain that a lot of other people would agree
Well, yeah.
with that.
Well, I agree with you.
I think it gave me an edge anyway.
Yeah. I mean, just think about my own story. My first line item, technical work experience line item on my resume was a 4-hour-a-week unpaid internship that was doing mostly SEO, kind of text updates on static websites. But it was technically working for another organization. And even though it didn't even qualify for part-time scale, just 4 hours a week, it was still something. Because it's one thing to say you're a passionate software engineer. It's another thing to you show that you are with that volunteer work experience line item and show that other organizations have trusted you by having those line items on your resume.
Absolutely. I think David Roberts, he's always saying that. It's pretty much his slogan, like just evidence your
Evidence.
value, give evidence, show that you're actually a valuable member of the community. And as you've just said now, anyone can write, I'm a passionate software developer. It's a bit pointless if you can't actually back it up with facts.
Yeah, and maybe there was a day, not too long ago when you could do that. If you just knew how to spell JavaScript, you could get a job as a software engineer. But
So,
whether it's a combination of all of the layoffs in tech leading to a large amount of mid and seniors in the market that you're competing against, or even the growth of boot camps. So now you have all that pressure of all the other competition. Either way, it means that you need to work a little bit harder to break in is what I'm feeling. But let's hear how that actually worked for you. Okay, so you did all this volunteer work. Now walk me through the timeline for the job that you have now. What was the very first step, and what were all the steps along the way that actually led to the offer that you got?
to how did I get
Yes, this
this
job that
job
you
that
have
I've got
now.
now? Um, I think it was at the beginning of December. Um, my friend sent me just an image of this this job posting that he'd seen from my boss. He posted on his personal LinkedIn account, and he didn't use recruiters or anything like that. He didn't go down the big channels like Indeed or Reed or anything like that. Uh, so I guess I got lucky. Um, I applied for the position. I think it was a mid-level P developer position with like 3 years experience in Laravel, which I absolutely didn't have. But I applied anyway. Um, and he got back in touch pretty quickly, asked me to tell him more about myself. So I did. I sent him my CV. And then he got in touch and said, unfortunately, you've just not got the experience that we're looking for this particular role. But we do have a junior position open, and I applied for that. Uh, I think he interviewed maybe 10 candidates altogether, and most of them were from similar backgrounds to myself, either changing career or just very young people that had gone through some kind of boot camp. Um, and I think he said, I did my interview on a Friday, I think, and he said, I'll be in touch on Monday or Tuesday next week to let you know how it went. And well, he got in touch the next week and said, sorry, but we can't actually take you on due to unforeseen circumstances. We can't actually take anyone on right now, but we would have chosen you. So we're quite gutted about that. We're a little bit upset.
Absolutely, anybody would be.
But then, well, a week later, a couple of days before Christmas, I got another email from him saying, due to other circumstances, we can take you on now. So we'd like to offer you a
What a nice
job.
Christmas surprise, a Christmas miracle.
It was a nice little surprise. And I think it was several things during the interview that kind of ticked all the right boxes, if you will.
So then, again,
Uh,
relative to the other candidates, you had this extra volunteer work, and not just one time. I'm looking at your LinkedIn right here. I'm seeing your volunteer work with Viet Limbo. I'm seeing your volunteer work with Chingu that you mentioned right here. So
yeah.
during the interview process,
Yeah.
did this volunteer experience come up at all? And do you think it helped differentiate you?
Yeah, he asked me about what kind of real world experience I had, and I told him about Viet Limbo, a website that I'd created. Uh, I don't think it's online anymore, but it was temporarily. And I also told him about my experience of uh, working with Chingu, that I worked with developers from, I think it was the US and India, all in different time
Hmm.
zones, doing team meetings and, you know, working together to create a project and trying to read each other's code and read each other's minds. That were difficult. But I think because there was a deadline and one of our developers actually let us down about 3 days before the deadline. We were expecting this person to do the CSS, and what they actually sent, we were like, that's just not what we've done in Figma. That it looks nothing like our Figma design. So me and the other developer, we just had to muscle together, sacrifice our weekend, and get the job done. And I think we managed to submit our project like 10 minutes before the deadline
Hey,
or
you made it.
something like
Yeah, but
that.
it's those type of
The manager actually said the manager said that we could go over the
yeah,
deadline. It was no problem. But we got it in just in time.
yeah. The real world is quite negotiable. I'm thinking about my time at university where I had an assignment due at midnight and I'd stay up all night and I would submit it 2 minutes before. But in reality,
I
at
remember them
work,
days.
yeah, it's a little bit more negotiable. You can craft your own deadlines for most times, but those are the experiences that if you are just iterating by yourself on your own personal project that you're not going to have. And those are the stories that
Yeah,
employers want to hear because it shows your grit and your determination. It shows your collaboration and it shows your ability to push through and get things done when it needs to get done. And relative to the other candidates that you were being compared against, you mentioned most of them were also right out of a boot camp, correct?
I think so.
Or also
Yeah.
entry level,
It
kind of
didn't
early in their career.
all
Yeah.
entry level. Yeah.
Which meant that they are probably, and this is the big drama that we have on our end when we interview junior candidates, is that they all look the same, right? You have maybe some non-traditional background if you're a career transitioner. That's typically in an industry unrelated to what we're doing. They list a few
Yeah.
personal projects. Most of them I'm not gonna look at, or the ones that I do sometimes are honestly like they look like they don't look that pretty, right? They look like they either copied it from a YouTube tutorial, or it's not a fully fleshed out application. But
That
yeah,
that would any junior developer trying to get the first role. I mean, you're familiar with the concept tutorial hell,
oh yeah,
and
yeah.
obviously like avoid falling into that trap, just because it's not a good habit to get into. But I think if you copy a tutorial from YouTube, any experienced enough hiring manager or programmer that's hiring a junior developer, if they see your code, and they're going to know straight away that you've just copied from a professional software engineer who makes YouTube videos. Like a junior developer writes like a junior developer. We're probably not following best practices and stuff like that and semantics, but we'll make a project and it'll work. But our code probably looks quite amateur.
Oh,
Uh,
it,
I
it's
mean,
it's
you'd
expected.
probably know
Yeah,
better than me.
it's expected. But the principle I want to
Yeah.
highlight here is that while yes, it's true that years of experience does not always mean skill level, doesn't always equate to skill level. But in the absence of information, when a recruiter is looking at hundreds of applications for an entry level role, uh, it is a good enough proxy for skill level that they can usually use that to whittle down their applicant pool from a few hundred to a few dozen, and those are the people that they end up talking with, like you. So what I'm trying to say is, your portfolio could be the best portfolio in the world, but it doesn't matter because you're going to get screened out at the very first level when the recruiter is just trying to get out all of the cruft from the applicant pool and just focus on those with actual quote unquote experience. So instead of
Absolutely.
working on that portfolio project for another hour, you got to find a way to wrap it in some contract or an LLC. That's in the United States, a way that you can create, formalize your own business, or volunteer work, some way that you can formalize it so you can put it as work experience on your resume. So then you pass that first filter by the recruiter.
Well, I mean, it was actually from you that I kind of got
Oh
tips
yeah.
like that from
Okay. Oh,
anyway.
we've come full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've watched a few of your podcasts before, and that's one of my favorite ones. I think I've got it saved on my YouTube. Actionable steps that you can take to give yourself some experience. And you definitely mentioned volunteering.
Mhm.
You mentioned starting a company, and I was kind of on the verge of doing that because I didn't want to leave Vietnam
Mhm.
and come all the way back to the UK and leave my wife. I thought maybe if I start my own web development company, then I can use that as experience. But I kind of lost me now.
Well, hey, it worked out for you in the end. But the whole idea
Yeah,
is that we're in
thankfully.
this interesting space right now where you need experience to get a job, but you can't get a job without experience. So instead of waiting for somebody to give
Yeah.
you experience, you need to find a way to give yourself experience. Well, I'm glad to hear that I'm not just yelling into the void and that somebody actually does listen to me sometimes.
Well, I was definitely listening.
Okay, well, it worked out for you. That's great to hear. So as we're nearing the end here, I do want to give you an opportunity to give any community shout outs to any organizations, tools, services, anything that you feel was helpful to you on your journey that you think might be helpful for our audience.
I mean, this is just what works for me. Like I said, Chingu definitely helped me to stand out. Somewhere else I would actually go, that's just loaded with opportunities for new and up and coming developers. Spend some time on Discord. I reckon that's a great place to find voluntary opportunities, and they will make you stand out. People are always posting that they need volunteer developers to help build a project. And a lot of the time, these are projects for um, like non-profits
Hmm.
and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So I definitely recommend spending time on
yeah, the
Discord.
whole idea there is really just to be engaged in your community. Your Discord, great option. Meetup.com, another great resource in your area. But the more that you connect with other
Yeah,
developers or other kind of entrepreneurial minded folks in your local network, the more you'll be
yeah.
exposed to opportunities where people need help. And then you can get that coveted line item on your resume. That's what it's all about.
I'd recommend following David Roberts as well, just because he gives lots of useful advice. Kind of recommend following you
Oh,
actually,
thank you.
because I get a lot of good tips from. Oh, no problem. And again, this worked for me. U3 Schools, I think, is a pretty good website. I've heard some other developers say that the content can be a little bit outdated, but just try it. If it doesn't work, then maybe it is outdated. But I haven't actually come across anything that's obsolete on W3 Schools yet. And I did like the way the content is delivered. I thought it was quite easy to follow, and it's you don't need to stay on the platform to benefit from it. You can just read and then sort of use it in VS Code and build your own projects. It's in small, bite-sized, manageable pieces, which I think is
Very
really good.
nice, especially when you're doing it in the evening in your
Yeah,
free time. You can't dedicate super large chunks of time to it. Well, for the
yeah,
resources that you
exactly.
mentioned, I'll make sure to include them in the show notes. And even at the end of this interview, I'll link to an episode that I had with David Roberts, actually, where we talked about similar topics, how to get your first job in tech. So click on that link if you're interested in learning more from the man himself, David. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for joining. Really happy to have you here. Thank you for sharing your story. It's all the time that we have for today. So thank you to everybody that's listening, and we will see you all next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Junior Jobs Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to like and subscribe, as that helps us reach more developers in need. And don't forget to check the show notes for details on today's sponsor and other job search services that we provide.